Hello, so it's LT. I recorded myself going through my OPB and the edits that were made to kind of hopefully shed some light on at least how I like to write them. So it's about 20 minutes. It's hopefully helpful. If not, I tried. So, yeah, here it is. I have my OPB from the version that I first wrote it, version 1, what Captain West did to it in version 2, and then finally Colonel West with version 3. So I'm going to go through it, try to talk about some of the things that are important when writing an OPB slash EPB. I also made a couple of comments, and then obviously this is going to be included in the email. So hopefully it's useful. But I'm just going to kind of talk at you for a little bit, and hopefully you can kind of glean some wisdom from that. So I'm going to start with the duty description. So for almost everybody in this section, it's going to be very similar, right? So we're CSTs. We fix computers. We report when stuff doesn't work. So it's important to kind of link the things that we do to the AOC's impact. And so that's what I say in this comment here, where, Colonel West focuses on delivering optionally focused cyber capabilities to the DoD's largest air operations center, right? So that is what we do as a section. And then you go into how that helps the, mobility ops, things like that. It's important to have that link statement, as I like to call it, because we're not the tip of the spear, but we are the wood that sits directly behind it. If we weren't there, the spear would go nowhere. So you just need that little bit of linkage to go, here's why we matter to Mobility Command. And generally speaking, that's either delivering cyber capabilities, safeguarding cyber capabilities, restoring cyber capabilities. You can say it 1,000 different ways, but it's important to have that link statement in between the, right, so what I do exactly, which is, leads everyone, the link statement of delivering these capabilities, and then the directing maintenance of blah, 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 blah for the missions and the joint maneuver forces and everything else like that. Also, going back up, in the beginning, there was somewhat of an emphasis on using your name. At this point, try not to use your name unless it's in the HLR. Actually, scratch that. Don't use your name unless it's in the HLR. And you can use pronouns sparingly, but generally try to avoid them as well. You can see they're pretty common in mine, but that's only because the guidance has changed since I wrote mine, and it will continue to change, which is why I try to keep it kind of higher level of here's how to write to this power and da 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 da. Also, I've included in my initial statement, I had that I stepped up as flight commander. You want to save the powerful stepping into a temporary position that you would normally not do for your HLR if you can, because that's generally speaking the most important part of your EPB. So for me, even though, yes, I did step up into temporary flight commander, that resolves down in my HLR. Really shouldn't be anywhere else in my OPB. And the last thing I'll say for this, the AOC has a lot of gimmies as far as like how we support them. Generally, like, advancing global mobility requirements, POTUS missions, humanitarian aid, and of course our 9 directorates. They're gimmies that you can spread out should you choose to. And it gives us a lot of impacts that are a lot higher than normal comm troops would have. And so, moving on for that, executing the mission. It's not a whole lot to say here, but the most important thing is, like, you don't need to mention your duty title twice. This was something that I did, unfortunately. But at the top, it'll say what your job is. You don't need to go over again and again. Shift lead of swings, or shift lead for 24/7 help desk, or client services technician for, DoD's largest AOC. You don't need to repeat those multiple times. You say it once up above in what your duty title is. You don't need to mention it from there. The exception to that is, again, if you're filling a temporary role, you kind of want to sprinkle that out. If you're, for example, a staff sergeant, you're filling a shift lead for X amount of time, maybe you mention that in one of your ALQs, but if you're a staff sergeant filling an NCOIC role, you would mention that in your HLR, because it's the next grade above. I will also say, especially for executing the mission, having things like liaised, showing that you are communicating with organizations outside of your own, tends to be very, very powerful. So for most of us, that'll be the 9 directorates, maybe BaseCom. If you have a good relationship with a couple of the organizations inside the SCIF, maybe you can say the NOC, things like that. That tends to look really, really good, is liaising with these different organizations. And then the last thing I'll say for executing the mission is these deter adversaries. So, somewhat of an unpopular opinion, if you want to write something that is to the absolute, like, top cream of the cream, you are saving the Air Force daily, you write it like you're in Call of Duty, which hopefully makes some sense. Deterring adversaries is something I'm obviously not doing personally, but by putting it in there, saying that, it elevates it to a certain degree. And the best way I can kind of describe it is, write it as if, you Call of Duty, you're saving X of X aero medical evacuation lives, things like that. And you want to save that for, like, your really powerful statements, and for the people that are performing at the level that earn those really, really powerful statements. Moving on to leading people, this one especially is kind of wishy-washy. You can write more or less anything into leading people. A lot of the ALQs, you change some verbiage, you change the way the sentence is structured. You can really put anything in anything. But leading people especially at the sergeant level and above, anything you do can be classified as leading people. You just have to write it the right way. I will take a moment and point out, here I have total Air Force. So you can't, unfortunately, it's an unapproved acronym. It was my bad on it. And so the place to go to is this AFPC, Career Management Acronyms. You literally just Google AFPC acronyms and they'll give you this page. So the common stuff, ranks, office symbols, things like that, you can put in. Everything else you can search. It's, Air Force Manual, whatever else. You want to make sure that you're using only approved acronyms. Total Force Airman was not approved at the time that I put my OPB in. So, and I also hit awards, generally speaking, should be in your HLR. If you are a supervisor, that is removed to a certain degree from whatever award you're referencing. That's generally okay to spread out for your ALQs. So for this one, right, team of the quarter, it's not really my direct intervention that caused that, but I was still somewhat of a player to it. If you ignore the one for Q1 that I wasn't a part of, but I digress. You put it in, And you can put it in the leading people, you can put it in improving the unit, things like that, for awards that people you have supervised have earned. Right. So the easiest example is if you as an airman have earned BTZ, put that in HLR. If you are the direct supervisor of the airman that has earned BTZ, you should probably still put that in the HLR. But if you are the supervisor to the supervisor, or maybe the mentor to the airman or the supervisor, then you can put it elsewhere in your EPB, if that makes sense. So you're not the direct cause, you didn't directly write the package, but maybe you reviewed it, you kind of gave notes, maybe pushed them in one direction or the other, then you can put it elsewhere in the ALQ. And then also I will say for leading people, I had commanded, you want to make sure that you don't speed, because that'll it'll make you lose points. Although currently leadership team's pretty good about correcting it. If you go to a board and they think that you're speeding, that's going to hit you pretty hard. So for me, I put commanded originally. Obviously, I did not command the continuously response cell overhaul. I collaborated with a couple of the other organizations, and we did not strive for that initiative. In fact, we slow rolled it for as long as we possibly could. So anyway, it's important to note the verbiage that you choose for the initial breach statement. Moving into managing resources. So here you can see I have a award that's buried and it's at the end of the statement. Generally speaking, if you have an award and it's not going in your HLR, it needs to be at the front, right? Which is what happened up here. Awards are one of the key differentiators between the average airman and the stellar airman, right? If they've won awards before, it's probably for a reason. So it's important to highlight them. Aside from that, there was some verbiage changed. So here I had directed, Captain West left as directed. However, Colonel West changed it to managed. Especially at my level as an officer, managed versus directed is a little bit different. Managed is a little bit more accurate into what I do, and it gives a little bit more strength to what happened and the rest of the bullet. Especially when we then bring up the manning, which is important for managing resources, because often if you're not an RA or someone who's directly managing money, it kind of becomes hard. It's like, what does managing resources even mean? Resources don't always need to be money, right? So I didn't touch any money. None of you have touched any money. However, we were in a pretty critical manning shortfall. And so saying that how you managed either going through that or managed the people within that manning shortfall is a way to say, way to provide how you are able to manage resources without it being strictly, US dollars. So for improving the unit, there's not a whole lot to be said. You really want to hit what's listed in the ALQ guide. Specifically for me, I struggle a little bit with pointing out here. You want to try and make your sentences flow to the best of your capability. It's not necessary, but it does help with the readability. It helps with the impact that sentences can have. I did take the moment to kind of point out here, it's an important tidbit, which is that generally speaking, the tense of your duty description should be in the past, things you have done. Your ALQs should be in the present, things you're currently doing. And then the HLR should be things that like your raider sees you doing in the future. So keep that in mind. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it is generally adhered to. And then I will also say for improving the unit, generally speaking, while you can bring up like some system improvement or some accountability improvement, what is the best regarded is things that impact airmen directly. So In this case, talking about the sauce and how it reduces the amount of times people come up and impact the airmen asking for a printer to be mapped, right? This is a very annoying thing to deal with. The sauce alleviates that. The impact to highlight is that it takes care of the airmen because they don't have to deal with those issues anymore. And then finally, I'll move on to the HLR statement. So I initially didn't write one. It's hard. It's really hard. You do it and it doesn't feel good doing it because you feel very like it's cringeworthy, is to put it in Gen Z terms. But do it to the best of your ability. You can see initially I started out with nothing, and then I kind of wrote into this. It's really not great, but Colonel West brought it back. You mention how they're doing in terms of their performance. Any awards that you want to put in there, because you, at this point, you should be hitting them back to back to back with awards. And then last but not least, you want to put in addition to the future roles, you really want to hit if you think they are worthy of a particular role, you want to put that in there. So hopefully that was useful, me going through my OPB. If not, apologies for wasting your time. However, I do have one section of an EPB that I went through that I would like to showcase really quickly. So this is just the leading people portion of the ALQ. And I just want to point out how the process in general works. So this is what I got initially from the EPB haver. So right up in front, commanded has to be changed. Similar to mine, it just can't stay. Sometimes actions within an ALQ that you were given fit better other places. So for this one in particular, with the Chief Performer of the Month program, I actually moved that to improving the unit instead of leading, even though they are, overseeing 25 airmen, leading them. It's a little bit easier to wrap it into improving the unit, saying you're recognizing these airmen, that kind of thing. I also changed it to supervised in my initial edits here. It's not a whole lot else other than that. Added a little bit more fluff to help hit that word count. Help show that there's a little bit more breadth to the individual's experience. And then obviously once we hit the shop level, the squadron level, it then becomes driving a team, posturing IT assets, things of that nature. So post edit LT here again, I kind of taper off and really don't say anything worthwhile. I'll leave you with a closing thought that the hardest part of writing these EPBs is the first draft. So do your best. Hopefully this was all helpful. But regardless, as long as you give your supervisors something that they can work with and polish and kind of show you their thought processes, they can focus on making your EPB as good as possible. Toodles.